Du Yangshi ignores Sang Yanrang's concerns and takes Shou Hua with him to his new post. Desperate, Sang Yanrang admits his feelings for Shou Hua and pleads with Du Yangshi to leave her behind. Later, Du Yangshi visits Yu Chuyai and notices an inscription identical to the one on his jade pendant, stirring doubts about his past. Soon after, he is appointed supervisor in the construction bureau, allowing him to remain in the capital. While Madame Li hosts a feast to celebrate his promotion, Du Yangshi never appears, leaving her furious. That night, he secretly meets Yu Xiui, fueling resentment. At home, he comforts a troubled Shou Hua but feels lost about their future. The next morning, his mother scolds him for skipping the banquet, causing more strain with Shou Hua. Frustrated by Du Yangshi's arrogance, Sang Yanrang finally cuts ties with him. Not long after, Du Yangshi brings home 2 concubines, enraging his mother. When she orders them to do household chores, Du Yangshi lashes out, accidentally injuring Shou Hua. Guilt-ridden, he declares himself unworthy and proposes divorce. Shou Hua returns to her family in heartbreak. Madame Li expects Du Yangshi to apologize, but instead, he delivers a firm divorce letter. Outraged, she scolds him while Shou Hua breaks down in tears. His mother, devastated, refuses to leave with him. Overcome with despair, she attempts to hang herself but collapses before succeeding. Shou Hua rushes to comfort her, though uncertainty lingers in her heart. Meanwhile, Shou Hua's sister, Kang Ning, seething with anger, demands that Qian cut all ties with Du Yangshi. Without hesitation, Qian agrees, vowing that Du Yangshi is now his enemy. Du Yangshi waits outside Panlu all night to meet Qian, who greets him coldly. Qian sarcastically remarks that Du Yangshi has abandoned his humble wife after passing the imperial exam and will soon marry a noblewoman. Du Yangshi, unaffected, asks Qian for help in keeping his secret and ensuring his body is properly handled after death. Meanwhile, Shou Hua goes out with her sisters, but rumors of her divorce spread, making her feel humiliated. She runs into Du Yangshi, who returns her old belongings and warns her to be cautious if she remarries. Realizing he still cares, she expresses her feelings, but he remains firm. To help him one last time, she publicly scolds him, cutting all ties. This is overheard and reported to Yue. The next day, Du Yangshi visits Yue, addressing him as Lord Taishan and thanking him for arranging his marriage to Yu Xiui. Meanwhile, Madame Li looks for a husband for Shou Hua but is mocked by a matchmaker. Furious, her daughter Lishan confronts the matchmaker, just as Sang Yanrang arrives to propose. He confesses his deep admiration for Shou Hua, but despite her family's approval, she refuses to remarry. Soon after, Du Yangshi's mother suffers a stroke. Madame Li calls a doctor, who successfully revives her. Her first words are a plea for Shou Hua to stop Du Yangshi's wedding, revealing that he is actually Yu Wei's son. At the Yu residence, during the wedding ceremony, Du Yangshi suddenly hesitates. Instead of bowing to the heavens, he bows 3 times to Yu Wei to thank him, to refuse the marriage, and to honor his mother. His actions shock the guests. When Madame Yu orders servants to silence him, Qian intervenes, allowing Du Yangshi to reveal the truth. He recounts how Yu Wei was once saved by the Xie family and married Xie Qiufang, Du Yangshi's mother. Despite her sacrifices, Yu Wei let her drown to secure a noble marriage. However, she survived with the help of a maid, gave birth to Du Yangshi, and later died in hardship. Yu Wei is stunned. When Du Yangshi demands to know why he betrayed his wife, Yu Wei reacts in anger. Without hesitation, Du Yangshi leaves for Kaifeng Prefecture to file a petition and turn himself in. 20 years ago, Liang Shi forced Yu Wei into marriage despite his resistance. Now, as a powerful court scholar, Yu Wei wields his influence freely. Knowing his time in the court is limited, he resigns and leaves his wife and daughter behind, angering Madame Yu, who claims his success is due to her. Meanwhile, Du Yangshi is imprisoned for accusing his father, a crime punishable by death under Song dynasty law. The Li sisters discuss ways to help, but Madame Li orders Shou Hua to cut ties with him. Qian, realizing Du Yangshi's loyalty, vows to save him, but even Judge Shen Huizhao, who admires Du Yangshi, is forced to sentence him to death, hearing the emperor has called an assembly. Shou Hua hopes for a reversal, but the chances seem slim. Lishan, outraged, rushes to Kaifeng to scold Shen Huizhao. Qian and Sang Yanrang try to intervene, but Shou Hua knows only one person can save Du Yangshi. Empress Dowager Louis Qian cleverly sends a message through a palace servant, using a symbolic painting to catch her attention. The next day, the Empress Dowager reviews the case. While Shen Huizhao upholds the death sentence, she argues for a mother's importance. countering the emperor's emphasis on fathers. When the emperor sides with Shen Huizhao, Du Yangshi cleverly demonstrates a child's instinct to call for their mother, impressing the Empress Dowager, who pardons him. Madame Yu is punished, Yu Xiui is demoted, and Yu Wei falls into disgrace. Du Yangshi then apologizes to Madame Li and shockingly proposes marrying into her family. However, the Sang family has already sent betrothal gifts for Shou Hua. Determined to stop the marriage, Du Yangshi intercepts the gifts, leading to a confrontation where Sang Yenrang punches him 3 times for his mother, Madame Li, and their broken brotherhood before making peace. Before leaving for his post, Sang Yenrang, recognizing Shou Hua's true feelings, allows her to send him off. He then nobly breaks off the engagement so she can be with Du Yangshi. Soon after, Du Yangshi publicly confesses his love, and the two reconcile. As time passes, the Li family prospers, but greedy relatives reappear, taking advantage of their success. A former maid, Akai, arrives with her son, claiming he is Madame Li's late husband's illegitimate child and demanding inheritance. Enraged, Madame Li throws them out, but they threaten legal action. The sons-in-law quickly learn about the lawsuit. Qian discovers that Akai, a former Li family servant, married a butcher named Wu and has a son, Yulong. However, no evidence proves Yulong is Madame Li's late husband's son. Du Yangshi returns with news that Akai and the Li relatives have filed a lawsuit to seize the family assets. Despite searching, Hada finds no documents verifying Yulong's claim, infuriating Madame Li. With no proof to counter it, the Li sisters gather their brothers-in-law to strategize. At trial, the Li brothers pretend to be reluctant but accuse Madame Li of refusing to adopt a male heir. Shen Huizhao dismisses their claim, affirming the daughter's right to inherit. The Li brothers then argue that their uncles will obligate Madame Li to support them financially. Enraged, Madame Li airs past grievances, Hada defends her mother, and with the brothers-in-law's help, they expose Yulong's deception. Under pressure, Akai confesses that the Li brothers bribed her to change Yulong's surname and falsely claim inheritance. Shen Huizhao punishes the schemers. His fairness impresses Hada, who later receives a hairpin from Shou Hua as a reward for winning the case. In a playful moment, Lishan accidentally drops it, and when Madame Li takes her side, Hada feels hurt and leaves in distress. Meanwhile, Du Yangshi frees Ranyue, a former Yu family servant, bringing joy to Shou Hua. Playfully, he demands a reward for his kindness. Just then, a tearful Hada confides in Shou Hua about her admiration for Shen Huizhao and asks Du Yangshi to act as a matchmaker. Though Shen Huizhao has sworn never to marry, the Shen family unexpectedly accepts the proposal, setting the wedding for the 2nd day of the 2nd lunar month. When Shen Huizhao returns, he is shocked to find his family has already brought his bride home. Furious, he sends Hada back, promising an apology in 3 days. Heartbroken, Hada runs home barefoot, crying. The Li family is outraged. However, Shen Huizhao later follows her and gently wraps her injured foot with a handkerchief, a moment that warms her heart despite her sorrow. Encouraged by her sisters, she resolves to win his love. At the Shen residence, Madame Shen is furious about the rejected bride, nearly fainting from anger. Just in time, Hada returns, easing tensions. Impressed by her determination, Madame Shen grows fond of her. Forced to accept her presence, Shen Huizhao agrees to a 1-year deal. Hada vows to make him love her, while Shen Huizhao, convinced she will give up, keeps his distance. Shen Huizhao stays in the study late at night, reviewing case files instead of resting. Following Grand Madame's orders, Hada brings him a bowl of nourishing tonic soup. However, Shen Huizhao fails to notice her hints, so she drinks it herself. Soon after, a maid locks the study, trapping them inside. By midnight, the effects of the medicine take hold, and Hada feels unbearable heat. Shen Huizhao instructs her to copy scriptures as a remedy. Meanwhile, at a banquet, Qian prevents Madame Li from drinking too much but accidentally reveals that his departure to sea was a strategic move. Furious, Kong Ning kicks him out. While wandering outside, Qian stumbles upon a murder scene and nearly trips over a corpse. Before he can react, a woman clings to him, screaming, "Murderer!" Meanwhile, Hada spends the entire night copying scriptures. By dawn, she bursts into tears, momentarily softening Shen Huizhao's cold demeanor. However, he insists they remain married in name only, promising to find her a suitable husband after a year. Just then, Qian is arrested for murder. With Du Yangshi away, Hada rushes to Kaifeng Prefecture but is stopped by a servant. Shen Huizhao interrogates Qian and punishes him with 40 harsh strikes of the rod. Desperate, Hada pleads for Qian's innocence, but Shen Huizhao, remaining impartial, escorts her home. Along the way, he explains that the victim's wife, Lu Shi, accused Qian of attempting to assault her while drunk, killing her husband when caught. Hada refuses to believe it and vows to prove his innocence. Before they can continue, their carriage overturns when startled horses flip it over. Shen Huizhao, injured while protecting Hada, falls unconscious. As she tends to his wounds, she realizes the dangers he faces, having made many enemies in his pursuit of justice. His own mother had died cursing him, blaming him for his sister's death. When he wakes, he has lost his memory. Seizing the opportunity, Lishan suggests how to claim her rightful place as his wife. However, Hada refuses to deceive him and instead focuses on proving Qian's innocence. With his personality softened by amnesia, Shen Huizhao reopens Qian's trial. Lu Shi argues convincingly, leaving him momentarily speechless. He resorts to torture, angering Qian, who swears to haunt him if wrongly convicted. Hada, listening from outside, is heartbroken but trusts Shen Huizhao's judgment. Soon, Qian appears to bite off his tongue and die, shocking everyone. Kang Ning arrives to see her husband's corpse and collapses in grief. That night, Lu Shi secretly meets her lover, Wang Shang, only to be caught by government officers. At the Li household, as the family mourns, Fu Hui and Fan Lianghan arrive with congratulations. Suddenly, Qian sits up and embraces Kang Ning. His death was staged to lure Lu Shi into a trap, clearing his name. With the case resolved, Hada feels reassured in her faith in Shen Huizhao. To her surprise, he praises her and offers her a sweet treat. Their relationship subtly warms, and when she excitedly suggests assisting in future trials, he agrees with a rare smile. Relatives visit after Shen Huizhao's marriage, pretending to care about his injury while secretly assessing its severity. Madame Shen asks Hada to greet them, but sensing their true intentions, she changes the topic and suggests a festival gathering to raise funds. Before she can finish, Shen Mu arrives with her daughter Guan Yang, and criticizes Hada for prioritizing money over tradition. Already resentful of Hada, Shen Mu humiliates Madame Li by making her serve tea before the guests. When others mock her, Hada defends her mother, arguing that a guest should not be treated this way. Shen Mu is left speechless as tension rises until Shen Huizhao arrives and skillfully eases the situation by apologizing to Madame Li himself. Later, she advises Hada to reconcile with Shen Mu for the sake of family harmony. Furious, Shen Mu spitefully orders premium ham and tea to be discarded, but Lishan witnesses it. That night, Lishan sneaks into Shen Mu's room and cuts her hair into a ridiculous style. The next morning, Shen Mu becomes the household joke. She storms in to complain to Madame Shen, but Shen Huizhao cleverly spins the situation, blaming it on enemies seeking revenge on him. The issue is swiftly settled. On the way to Kaifeng Prefecture, Shen Huizhao playfully warns Hada to inform him before pulling pranks in the future. Their journey is filled with laughter. At the prefecture, Hada takes care of him, reheating his medicinal soup and preparing sweets to mask the bitterness. Meanwhile, Lishan and Xiang Nu, gossiping at a teahouse, spot Guan Yang secretly meeting someone at Pan Tower. Inspired, Lishan devises a plan. Around the same time, Shen Mu frames Hada by planting prayer beads in her room. To protect her, Lishan takes the blame and is punished. Enraged, Hada exposes Guan Yang's secret relationship with Wu Xiaolin, prompting Shen Mu to punish her daughter and vow legal action. The feud between the Wu and Xiao families complicates matters, but Hada wants to help Guan Yang and Wu Xiaolin. She urges Shen Huizhao to intervene, but he doubts it can be resolved peacefully due to Shen Mu's temper. Upon arriving at Kaifeng Prefecture, they find that Du Yangshi has been appointed judge. To avoid bias, Shen Huizhao lets him handle the case. In court, the families argue fiercely. Unable to decide immediately, Du Yangshi suspends the trial. Later, he rules according to Song dynasty law, sentencing Guan Yang to flogging and forbidding her marriage. Shen Huizhao supports the decision. If an unmarried woman is publicly flogged, it ruins her reputation. To prevent this, Hada and Lishan seek advice from their clever elder sisters. At first, the sisters hesitate, but after much persuasion, they agree that winning over Judge Du Yangshi is key. Shou Hua knows Du Yangshi values talent and recognition over money. If they present a unique case, it might catch his interest. Meanwhile, Fan Lianhan overhears their plan and alerts Qian and Du Yangshi. The men, including Shen Huizhao, discuss the situation. Shen Huizhao doubts the women can change the verdict, but the others warn him not to underestimate them, as Shenmu complains to Madame Shen, Hao rushes back, claiming she is only offering comfort. When Shen Huizhao appears, Hao quickly lies, saying Madame Shen is headed to the temple, though she is actually arranging a marriage. The next day in court, the Li sisters argue that love stories can transcend traditional matchmaking and that marriage laws cannot suppress human desires. The Wu family, now at peace with the Qiu family, joins Shenmu in supporting the couple, claiming a past marriage agreement. Shen Huizhao expects this and sends a message to Du Yangxi. However, when Du Yangxi reads a love poem written by Wu Xiulin, he sympathizes with the young man. Though Shen Huizhao is sure Hao will lose, she has another trick. Wu Xiulin writes another poem on the spot, praising Du Yangxi's fairness. Flattered, Du Yangxi approves the marriage. At the same time, the Shen family introduces two other young couples, who instantly fall in love. The elders relent, and the families celebrate. Accepting defeat, Shen Huizhao admits he has underestimated Hao De. Before leaving, Gui Niang gifts Hao De a butterfly jade pendant. Even Shenmu, though reluctant, thanks her and offers future support. With this issue resolved, Li Shan suddenly remembers the one-year agreement between Hao De and Shen Huizhao, realizing their time is running out. That evening, Hao De brings him medicine, fearing he is angry, but he is actually reflecting on his strict judgments. A book helps him realize that fairness must be balanced with compassion. Madame Shen, wanting Hao De to manage the household properly, makes her work late into the night. Seeing her exhausted, Shen Huizhao negotiates with Madame Shen and brings Hao De back to their room, strengthening their bond. The next day, during a meeting with judicial officials, Chief Judge Shui Guang exposes Shen Huizhao's memory loss. Though shaken, Shen Huizhao is relieved when Shui Guang, his former mentor, reassures him and playfully asks if his change in judgment style is due to someone special, making him think of his wife. Meanwhile, Hao De visits Shen Huizhao but gets sidetracked by a mute prisoner, Zheng Sui, sentenced to death for killing her husband. Shocked by her cut-out tongue, Hao De cannot forget her hopeless expression. She convinces Shen Huizhao to visit the prison with the woman's mother-in-law and daughter. Pleased by his agreement, she kisses his cheek. During the visit, Du Yangxi reveals that some officers cut out prisoners' tongues to prevent them from pleading their innocence, avoiding retrials that could expose judicial errors. Zheng Sui's mother-in-law insists she was deeply in love with her husband and could not have killed him. Shen Huizhao, suspecting injustice, decides to investigate further. Hao De visits the prison, hoping Zheng Sui will reveal the real murderer, but Zheng Sui, timid and fearful, refuses to speak. Shen Huizhao and Du Yangxi suspect the culprit is a high-ranking official rather than a wealthy family member. After persistent persuasion, Zheng Sui mentions the character Shui in a book, prompting Hao De and Shen Huizhao to investigate families with that surname, yet Zheng Sui denies knowing any of them. Hao De then realizes they have overlooked one family, that of Shui Guang, the chief judge. Though Shen Huizhao doubts his mentor's involvement, he agrees to visit. At Shui Guang's home, they notice there is no name plaque. Shui Guang explains that he has lived simply for decades, avoiding attention. While Shen Huizhao and Hao De begin to believe in his integrity, Zheng Sui trembles in fear at the sight of him, though they don't notice. Meanwhile, Shui Guang gives a cryptic smile. Back at Kaifeng Prefecture, Shen Huizhao, lacking solid evidence, orders that Zheng Sui's original death sentence remain. However, he secretly instructs Qin Shi to investigate further, suspecting his mentor. Meanwhile, Shui Guang angrily strikes his son, Shui Shizu, for his crimes, including the assault and murder of his wife. Shui Shizu, unrepentant, blames his father for their hardships and begs him to ensure Zheng Sui's execution to protect himself from Shen Huizhao's strict justice. Late at night, Hao De, exhausted and worried, visits Shen Huizhao in his study, where he carries her to bed, feeling even more affection for her. The next day, she is even more determined to help Zheng Sui after learning the full extent of her torture. Meanwhile, Du Yangxi visits Shou Hua for legal advice, which inspires Hao De with a new strategy. Shen Huizhao meets with Shui Guang again and deliberately brings up Zheng Sui's case. Realizing Shen Huizhao knows the truth, Shui Guang responds arrogantly, disappointing his former student. Before leaving, Shen Huizhao returns Shui Guang's old notebook, stating that the hardest thing to judge is not cases, but human nature. Justice should never be compromised. Accepting that he can no longer cover up the crime, Shui Guang personally takes his son to Kaifeng Prefecture. Hao De continues encouraging Zheng Sui, who finally confesses that the Shui family has tortured her. When confronted, Shui Shizu has a prepared excuse, but under Hao De's guidance, Zheng Sui bites him fiercely. The bite marks match those from the original assault, proving his guilt. Shuasizu is convicted, and Zheng Sui is acquitted. With her name cleared, Zheng Sui returns home with her mother-in-law and child. Haoda gifts her a bracelet, urging her to live well. Meanwhile, Shen Huizhao and Haoda's bond deepens, but Shen Huizhao grows angry at Madame Lu's interference in household matters and prepares to expel her. Haoda intervenes, leading Madame Lu to reflect and vow loyalty. Soon after, Haoda notices a young military officer, Xiao Du, practicing in the courtyard. She plans to introduce him to her unmarried sister, Xiaonu. Shen Huizhao, misunderstanding the situation, grows jealous and makes things difficult for Xiao Du, while Qingshi observes everything with amusement.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe and like for more videos like this.